We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And now, New Galaxy Enterprises proudly presents Inalienable and Free, a program addressing the grave challenges to human and citizen rights in America and the rest of the world. How can we, the people of Earth, take back the power and privileges granted to us by God and addressed so significantly in the Declaration of Independence? Our rights are inalienable, that is, given by God and incapable of being taken away from or given by another. These rights are the basis of liberty, the foundation of all life and happiness. This is Johnny Bluestar. My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. Projects could be nonfiction books or novels, screenplays, commercials, audio or video products, musical scores for ads, TV or film, etc. If you need help to accomplish your goals, visit newgalaxyenterprises.com or contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. Turn your vision into a dazzling media reality. Manifest your media dream today. Good morning, Hugo.
Good morning, Johnny.
Today's program is going to be interesting because today is the first day of the official government shutdown. It's just a kind of an amazing thing. How do you feel about it, Hugo?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's the wrong thing to do, but in a lot of ways, Trump is right. To make one issue such a sticking point to sign up to renew the budget and all that by the Democrats, what if it had been some other issue?
Are you talking about DACA as the issue?
Right. So
actually, as we'll discuss, that's not really the core issue, although that is an issue. But first, before we go into that, here's a brief description of the procedures leading to a shutdown from a video created before today's exciting moment. So let's see what we're in for.
A government shutdown would be horrible for the country.
Why do we keep hearing about a possible government shutdown? To understand why, you need to understand the federal budget process. The Congressional Budget Act of 1974 established guidelines for funding the federal government, and it sets a detailed timeline. It starts with the president submitting a budget to Congress on the first Monday in February. The Congressional Budget Office reviews it and submits a report to the House and Senate budget committees. That results in reviews and resolutions in 12 subcommittees, with each one responsible for setting funding for various parts of the government. Congress has until October 1st, the start of the fiscal year, to pass the budget. If lawmakers can't agree, they can pass temporary measures called continuing resolutions. In that case, lawmakers usually just continue the funding levels from the previous year. If both of those fail, then they have a funding gap. If that gap lasts more than a day or so, that's usually when we end up with a government shutdown. Since 1977, there have been 18 funding gaps. The most recent one resulted in a 16-day government shutdown in October 2013. With the partisan divide in Washington, Congress has had to rely on continuing resolutions more frequently in recent years. For the past 20 years, lawmakers have needed an average of 6 continuing resolutions every fiscal year to keep the government running. Currently, the government is funded with a continuing resolution through April 28th.
Yeah, for most of us, it's not going to make much of a difference. Many federal employees would have to go home. Here's a breakdown of a few of the departments and how many employees would have to leave, in many cases partially or almost completely curtailing their efficiency and work. So stuff like the housing and urban development, not that important. 96% of their 7,800 people are gone. The Environmental Protection Agency, well, we don't think that much of that, for sure. So we get rid of 95% of the 13,701. Go home. Education? Nah. 95% go home. Health and Human Services? Well, we can't get away with too much of that, so we'll just send 50% and 50% of the civilian workforce home. The Justice Department? Nah, we don't need that. 17% go. 17%. The 70% are going to stay, actually. That's good. So Homeland Security, 13% because that's real important, and 4% for veteran affairs because that could cause problems. So critical services that protect the life or human property and air traffic control and the postal service, they're going to be there. We don't have to worry about that, especially the TSA. It'll be fine. I think that we'll just take a look at the shutdown. One thing, Hugo, that I wanted to say is that it's Donald Trump who's using DACA. It's not just DACA is part of it, because they're not going to pass DACA unless their military budget is accepted. And their military budget, as we're going to see, is rather high. So it's really the military versus the domestic budget that's the core thing, and they're using their little games in order to extract whatever they can to get as much military spending as possible, having already given 85% of the domestic budget through tax cuts to the very rich. Here's what Bernie Sanders had to say.
Democratic presidential candidate and Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, as of right now, are you a no vote on the continuing resolution as it stands?
Yes. I think what is going on, to me, is very clear. That the Republicans really want to shut down the government for whatever reason. Where we are, Anderson, is not complicated. As you know, in the United States Senate, you need 60 votes to pass this budget resolution. Mitch McConnell doesn't have 60 votes. He doesn't have it. He knows he doesn't have it. The option that he has now is to say, okay, I don't have the 60 votes. Let us sit down and negotiate. Let us work in a nonpartisan way to address the crises facing this country. Last night, you may have heard this, we received a tweet from the Pentagon. And what the Pentagon told us is they need a fully funded fiscal year 2018 budget or face ramifications for our military. This is the Pentagon. They cannot function on a month-to-month basis. We are a $4 trillion government. We need to have an annual budget, because what's going on now is very, very dangerous and wasteful for our country. Many, many crises that have not even been addressed. We cannot keep kicking the can down the road.
Well, the Republicans, obviously, and the White House are saying, well, look, it's the Democrats who seem to want to shut down that by forcing the issue on immigration, on DACA, which is something that could be done a week from now.
That is not true. Here again is the situation, and let the viewers make their decision. Mitch McConnell does not have 60 votes. And if he goes forward tonight at 10 o'clock, as I understand he will lose. Therefore, the government will shut down. Understanding that, what a rational person who does not want to shut down the government does is say, okay, I don't have the 60 votes. I can't do it alone with the Republicans. We have to sit down and negotiate. What do you want? Let's go forward. That is what has to happen. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, I mean, they may think politically that a shutdown works to their benefit. You'll remember way back when the president, Donald Trump, was talking about how maybe the country needs a good government shutdown. I don't know. But I think it will be a very unfortunate thing. McConnell has got to start negotiating. And it's not just about DACA. We are 3.5 months into the fiscal year. 3.5 months. We still don't have an annual budget. You know what that means? It means 27 million people in community health centers have not received refunding, the new funding authorization. It means that 30,000 vacancies at the Veterans Administration are still not filled. It means we have a heroin and opioid epidemic sweeping this country. We are not addressing it. We have a collapsing infrastructure. We are not addressing it. So we have real work to do, and we can't simply have a dysfunctional government which doesn't address our problems and passes a continuing resolution month by month by month.
What do you think of his...
Well, we got problems.
Yeah, we have a lot of problems.
You know, I love Bernie Sanders. I believe just about everything he says, except for one thing. The minute we start talking the military, I just get the heebie-jeebies. You know, I think there's a lot we don't know. You know, for the Pentagon people to put out a paper saying that terrorism is no longer our number one enemy, but that Russia and China are. when they combined don't have more than 20% of the military we have, that gives me pause. So I think it all boils down to the same old thing, that we're a decaying empire and it needs to keep its soldiers up so that the natives don't go wild.
Well, Bernie Sanders has not really, during the campaign at least, emphasized too much about the military-industrial complex and this sort of thing. But I understand, and I've heard a little bit, he's begun to talk about it. But I was also a little bit, you see, the problem is not that there's not a year for the defense budget. That's not the problem. But let me just go on here about this for a second. The whole thing is pretty bad about the shutdown, but things are happening geopolitically, which all the hoopla over the shutdown may hide. Perhaps the most important part of the shutdown to really think about is its core reason, which is not DACA, like I was saying, and which Nancy Pelosi spoke about recently. Most people think it, but rather the debate over funding military over domestic affairs, and thereby threatening citizens' vital needs at a time when the recent tax cuts removed something like $80 billion from those services and gave it as a tax cut to the very wealthy. And a lot of that money, I believe, Hugo, you can tell me, was supposed to support the state's Medicaid services, right? So now the states are deprived of those Medicaid services. Serious stuff, because those Medicaid services generally go to actually really rather indigent people. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it's true.
But now most of the Republicans insist on upping the defense budget, and this is the central matter causing the shutdown. And they're using this DACA as a little thing to play with, because they know the Democrats want it, and it distracts from people seeing what this thing is really about, because Trump is holding that up. We're not going to do this unless we get our, everything taken care of. But not all Republicans share the idea about how great this is to add more money to the defense budget, which was usually, as I understand it, was a pairing, $1 to the defense, $1 to the domestic. But now he's changing that because he really wants some stuff real bad. I'm talking about Trump. Here's a brief excerpt from a Fox interview with Representative Jimmy Duncan, a Republican from Tennessee.
A Republican congressman who disagrees. Jimmy Duncan says that true fiscal conservatives simply cannot justify upping the defense budget to that degree. It would be over $100 billion from where it is now, Congressman, and you're saying that's a little extreme, right?
Well, it was $80 billion over the budget caps, Neil, and it was billions more even than President Trump requested. And so I asked the question, it makes me wonder whether there's any fiscal conservatives at the Pentagon. And I'm very pro-defense, but you can go ridiculously overboard on anything, and we've more than doubled defense spending since 2000, and that's more than double the rate of inflation during those years. So I think we need to look for ways to operate more efficiently with a little less money, and I think it's possible to do that.
Now, are you saying a little less money from the budget the way it is now, or from what they're talking about to break these spending caps to allow for a little bit more? One of the things, for example, that John McCain has looked to do.
Well, I said in the speech I gave on the floor, that our national debt has now gone over $20 trillion. And we announced a few weeks ago that the deficit for this past fiscal year was $666 billion. And some people think it's going to be even higher this next year. And so I think we've got to have some fiscal conservatism in every department, even in the Defense Department. And in fact, there is waste, even in the Defense Department. And I'm a veteran. I started in the Army as an enlisted man and rose to the rank of captain. And I think national defense is probably our most legitimate function of our national government. But I still think that we ought to operate frugally, even in that department.
Out of 52 cards, and I'll tell you what, most of the time I get it right. Do you know how I do it, Hugo?
No.
Well, I spread out the deck and I show it to them. Pick a card, any card. Well, what actually happens is that I pull this card out a little bit further than the others, and I wave it in front of them. And so they pick the most convenient card, which is the card that I want them to pick. I distract them. I divert their attention from what they're doing, so they don't see what I'm doing. And that's how a lot of magicians work. They will, especially, in close-up magic, they'll divert people's attention. I mean, it's not a very great trick, but I'll tell you what, when you pick up one card out of 52 cards, they think it is. Now, I think it's just a theory. I mean, I'm worried about it, though, that this shutdown comes at a very peculiar time because things are going really well with South and North Korea. You know what I mean?
Yes, you mean the Olympics and the talks that they've been engaged in?
Yeah, and the military hotline that they set up again. I mean, and they're actually having a team work together under maybe the soccer team under one flag, which I think has been done before a long time ago. But that's a very significant thing. And of course you could say, well, why is Kim doing all this? Does he want to create an obstacle between the United States and South Korea? Well, I think that's a good likely possibility. The other thing is, though, stuff is going on that shows that the United States is not really all that happy about what's happening. And So let's take a look at the events that have happened here. Let's take a listen to what Al Jazeera said as these events unfolded.
Until recently, the North Koreans have refused to even pick up the phone when the South Koreans tried to place calls at the border hotline. So it was significant to see Ri Son-kwon, the man in charge of inter-Korean relations for the government in the north, stepping over the border into the southern side of what's known as the Truce Village at Panmunjom, leading a 5-member team of high-ranking officials into a meeting with his South Korean counterpart.
Our talks resume after North and South Korean ties have been severed for a long time, but I believe the first step is half the journey.
We came to this meeting today with a serious and sincere attitude, and with the thought of giving our brethren, who have high hopes for this dialogue, invaluable results as the first present of the year.
The meeting did produce results, an agreement for North Korean representatives to attend next month's Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in has dubbed them the Peace Olympics, and it's hoped that with its athletes in Pyeongchang, North Korea may be less likely to conduct any missile or nuclear tests. The United States and South Korea have already said they would put off any joint military exercises until after the Winter Games.
South Korea also proposed more discussions on reunions for separated family members to coincide with the Lunar New Year next month, as well as military talks to diffuse tensions at the border. That talks between the Koreans are happening at all is seen by many in the South as a positive step.
I believe these formal diplomatic discussions can result in peace. Foreigners see the Korean Peninsula as a dangerous place that's under the constant threat of war, and I hope those concerns don't become reality.
But skeptics are concerned the talks won't do enough to resolve the major issue of North Korea's nuclear weapons program. South Korea says it mentioned denuclearization, drawing little response.
Their nuclear weapon development program is a threat to the regional and international community, and the United Nations has implemented very strict sanctions. So we need to maintain our stance that they need to abide by the resolution as we have been asking them.
Still, Japan says it welcomes North Korea's change in attitude on attending the Winter Olympics. Kathy Novak, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Sort of the intention of the North Koreans here.
I think there's something rotten in Denmark. And it's so easy to just blame the enemy and blame North Korea. And I just think that we need to look at things the opposite way. Here are two countries that are talking to each other. What's wrong with that, for heaven's sakes? I don't care about the motives behind North Korea. I just think it's great that they're talking. Now, if their discussions lead to the U.S. getting the hell out of there, well, I say yes. Let those countries have their say. You know, if North Korea has evil motives, I tell you, what can be so evil about survival? They feel threatened. You know, we have thousands of soldiers right across the border. We've already killed a whole lot of tyrants and dictators in other countries because they didn't do our bidding. And so for North Korea to say, you know what, we're going to be aggressive and bellicose and threaten and this and that and posture, Could it be a survival mechanism, just like a trap?
Well, I think it is. I think it is. I think if, as an example, if they were to, you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was all about sending missiles to Cuba, nuclear-armed missiles to Cuba, which could, would shorten the attack, so we wouldn't have time to retaliate with our mutually assured destruction scenario, which is something we should get into. But nonetheless, this isn't just a country that said bellicose things. This is a country which North Korea is saying it's aiming its missiles at the United States. And I think that because of the way he's acted and for many, many reasons, and actually put other countries around him, like Japan, in danger, and of course Guam and then Hawaii, just nearby, and everywhere else in the continental United States, I don't see how we can let him have those weapons.
Well, I'm sorry, I just see things totally different. Like I was telling you,
that's fine.
If you trap a pregnant cat in a corner, this cat, even though you could kill it with one swift kick, will act totally aggressive, and it has a right to do so. I just think that we shouldn't be out there at all. Now, again, for North Korea to say all these things, yeah, we should be concerned, but we need to look at the reasons.
It isn't just saying them, though. It's firing a missile over Japan, as an example. It's firing.
Of course, but I'm sorry. I just think it's all a big, huge white flag, false.
Well, the trouble with nuclear weapons is that nuclear weapons, you can make mistakes with them, and with a person with the wrong temperament, those mistakes can be. Look, here's an example. The weapon that they fired, the latest, the sixth test of their so-called hydrogen weapon, that was 15 times as strong as Hiroshima. It would destroy, even if it was sent out by accident, whatever happened, it would destroy Los Angeles or any major city in the United States, possibly a lot of the state. Why I don't see it. I'm sorry?
George I kept saying they're building bombs and they're going to attack us. We need to go attack them first. And I remember Saddam Hussein almost crying, saying, please, let's negotiate, let's talk. No, we invaded them anyway because they had weapons of mass destruction. I get it.
They did, but they didn't have them. And many people knew they didn't have them, right?
They didn't have them.
Many people knew that. Including the people who went ahead who used that false information as an excuse to attack them. But this is different. They do have weapons of mass destruction, and they have used the most exceptional bellicose, threats that any nation has ever used against another nation.
The most aggressive nation in the world is the United States. And we have.
I'm not talking about aggressive. I'm talking about threats. We haven't gone ahead and said we're gonna attack Moscow. We're gonna attack, a suburb, a specific place in Moscow. Specific place in Russia with a nuclear weapon. We haven't talked that way, have we?
Don't know that we haven't talked that way.
We have bases in just about every country. Said the things
we have Russia surrounded. We have Russia surrounded. We have China surrounded by atomic bombs.
I'm not trying to excuse us. I am totally against our having, or Russia having, or China having, or North Korea having, or India, or Pakistan, or France, or England having nuclear weapons. I am totally against it. But I don't see how we can. We have to control. That is, the world has to control this proliferation, especially with a country like North Korea, which violates all kinds of rules.
And what gives the right the United States to decide who and have all these bombs, atomic bombs, submarines throughout the world, pointing at every country?
It doesn't have it right.
We've got a knife to their throats. We have a knife to every country's throats. And for us to say we're not threatening other countries is naive.
I'm not saying we're not threatening other countries. I'm saying we're not publicly threatening other countries in this way.
Exactly.
And I'm not. There is a difference.
I just find it really disconcerting that two countries start talking to each other, and we find fault with that.
Oh, I do too. I mean, that's part of the reason I guess you don't really completely know where I'm going with this at this point. Let me continue on for a little while. So you have these two countries talking for the first time in so many years, right? And right. Actually doing stuff under one flag. But listen to what's happening while this is going on. After the commitment to the Olympic Games, the United States held a recent meeting in Canada with 19 of the countries that were on our side during the Korean War. That is the, quote, United Nations side, but it was really our side mostly. During the Korean War, Russia and China, probably the most influential players in this conflict, who sided with the United Nations resolutions, for sanctioning North Korea, they weren't invited. Primarily, they said, because they did not want the Russia or the China to demand that South Korea and North Korea joint military exercises would be halted. Now, I find that to be an example of certain kinds of not so subtle interference with the sense of maybe peacefulness that might be generated by their meeting. This is a gigantic meeting with all these countries, and the two countries that don't. You were talking about why North Korea was threatened. Well, it's threatened by these United States and South Korea holding these joint military exercises all the time. That is Kim's one of his major complaints, and we won't stop. Why won't we stop? Is it because they somehow give us an unalterable advantage? I don't think so. I think it's psychological. I think we won't stop because we want to intimidate him continually. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's the way, if you look at history, that's what we see time and time again. So that's why when we look at these current events, we do well to look at what we've done in the past. So, yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, Nikki Haley, I heard her say, we have to do it. It's, protecting ourselves. I don't think so.
No.
We got so much military power there surrounding him.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
exactly.
Are we going to send it? Are we going to save 3 seconds? I mean, maybe that's important, but it's just ridiculous.
I totally agree. I just think that we're not hearing the whole story. So I'm glad that you're digging and finding these facts that paint a whole different picture. So,
it gets worse.
Like you were saying, really, yeah, it's paying no attention to the man behind the curtain. We don't want to expose our own shady motives.
See, I do agree with the sanctions. I do agree that the various countries, including China and Russia, who wanted the sanctions, we don't want another country having any nuclear weapons. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to. You personally, we want to get rid of all of them. And Obama promised that he would try, which he didn't do. But he did give the first volley to try and say, let's have nuclear disarmament. We have to have it. We can't live like this. But nonetheless, looking at it contextually, this looks very, very upsetting to me. But here's something else. Right now, in January, I believe, the Huffington Post found a draft of Trump's nuclear review. And I'd like to read a portion of it. We're going to get back to this vital discussion right after a short break. This is Johnny Bluestar, CEO of New Galaxy Enterprises, a media content development company. My company, under the direction of our technical director, Hassan Khan, specializes in the development of user-friendly WordPress sites. These may be used in manifold ways to promote products and services, to become a platform or forum for your ideas or your special interests or fascinations, or to enhance your personal image. To learn more about New Galaxy, see samples of our work, or talk to us about your project, please go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com and fill out the contact form. In Killer.com, Brent Marks, an attorney and protagonist of Ken Eads' Brent Marks legal thriller series, is attacked by defamatory posts on the internet. Attempting to sue them, Marks becomes a victim of further plot against him when they hire a paid-for assassin to initiate a murder which they ultimately pin on Brent Marks. The following excerpt describes the killer's first steps to carry out his assignment.
Alan Becker woke to see the stranger sitting at the foot of his bed. At first, he rubbed his eyes to ascertain if he was dreaming. Then his heart pumped wildly as he sat up straight in bed. He felt the arteries in his neck pulsating and the adrenaline tingled his nerves. "Hello, Alan," said the stranger, a shadow in the darkness illuminated by the sliver of light from the moon through the window. Alan reached under his pillow. "It's not there," said the stranger. "I have it," he said, holding up a snub-nosed .38 revolver, which gleamed in the moonlight. "You know, it's dangerous to keep a loaded gun in your bed." "What do you want?" asked Alan frantically. "Nothing." "Do you want money? I can give you money." "Tisk, tisk, Alan. Must it always be about money with you? Money is what got you into this situation after all. No, Alan, I don't want your money." "Then what?" "I'm happy you asked. I'm going to give you a series of tasks to do, and you are going to do them." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll kill you." Becker looked around the room. A bead of sweat had formed on his eyebrows, and he was all stiffened up and ready to run. "It's no use, Alan. You can't escape. You're going to follow my instructions, unless you want this to be as painful as it possibly can be." The stranger stood, gun trained on Becker's head, and turned on the light with his left hand. He was balding, of average height, and appeared to be in good physical shape. "Now, Alan, I want you to get up and sit down there at your desk." Becker got out of bed and sat down at the mahogany desk, where he noticed that his personal stationery had been laid out for him, as well as a pen. "Pick up the pen, Alan." Becker hesitated. Suddenly the stranger locked his gloved left hand around Becker's throat, lifted him several inches off the chair, and held the gun to his temple. Becker choked and gasped for air. "Maybe you didn't hear me, Alan," he said calmly. "I said, pick up the pen." Becker felt around the desk below him until he found the pen. The stranger let go, and Becker fell back into his seat. "That's better. Now, please don't make me repeat myself. We have a lot of work to do."
Now, getting back to what we were talking about before, which was the draft of Trump's nuclear review, I mentioned that Obama had said, and it was actually at a meeting in Prague, which the article notes, he said, "Clearly and with conviction, America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons." Well, that was a major change from the George W. Bush administration. If you recall, they were after the preemptive nuclear strike was part of their possibilities. Now the Trump administration is going much further than Bush had done, because in October, NBC reported that the president had told a gathering of high-ranking national security leaders he wanted to do what amounted to nearly a 10-fold increase in the U.S. nuclear arsenal. And also, that's not in the report, but it's still calls for the development of new so-called low-yield nuclear weapons. Now listen to this. These smaller nukes are okay, that sounds good, except that what you do is, instead of destroying a whole country and crippling and torturing people really who survive with the devastating effects of radiation for a long time or a short time, just like what happened in Hiroshima, but you want to use those instead of just killing people. You want to wreak that kind of devastation on them. But one of the problems is that the low yield nuclear weapons, Nagasaki, the bombs we used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki count as being these low yield nuclear weapons. Isn't that strange, Hugo? I mean, that's a low yield nuclear weapon. That's like a tactical one now, right?
Yeah, it's madness, total madness, to even contemplate to build more. atomic power and the military when we have just about as much as the whole world combined.
We have over 1,000 nuclear warheads right now with low yield options. We have 1,000 of those ones now. But Trump loves to talk about nuclear weapons. Now, before, during the campaign, he asked, he talked to some people, and one of the things he was quoted as saying is, well, if we have so many nuclear weapons, why don't we use them? That is the insanity of mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, it's madness. Speaking of Obama, we haven't talked much about him, but let me just say this. I was so excited to vote for him and everything he stood for. I read all his books and all that. And before he took office the first term, I already saw the writing on the wall. I was so bitterly disappointed because as he began to gather his cabinet, I saw that he was picking on the same establishment bankers type of guys, the very same players who had created the whole disaster of 2008. And he starts picking the same people who are beholden to Wall Street and all the banksters and all the money. I think they just sat down with Obama and they said, listen, mister, this is the way things are done. Now, you can talk pretty if you want, but this is what's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, he did the same with nuclear weapons. He didn't stop anything. Remember when the Nobel Peace Prize? He didn't do anything. He just talked big, and almost everything he said he'd do, not everything, but mostly everything, he did not do.
Yeah. The same with immigration. He talked so pretty about immigration, and he deported more people than the previous Bush president.
Well, the thing is, I don't look at the Antichrist as a person coming, to be honest with you. But I look at the Antichrist as a kind of force of illusion, which at some point, because of selfishness and because of hatred and other failings of the human consciousness, you are attracted to doing things that are the opposite of the good, opposite of true consciousness of God, of the Shekinah presence. And that's, I think, what happens. And so you've got a really dangerous thing here in this little discussion from the Nuclear Review, but there's more to it. Listen to this, Hugo. This is from a New York Times article. A newly drafted United States nuclear strategy that has been sent to the Pentagon, Trump, for approval would permit the use of nuclear weapons to respond to a wide range of devastating but non-nuclear attacks on American infrastructure, including what current and former government officials described as the most crippling type of cyber attacks. For decades, American presidents have threatened first use of nuclear weapons against enemies in only very narrow and limited circumstances, such as response to the use of biological weapons against the U.S. But the new document is the first to expand that to include attempts to destroy wide-ranging infrastructure, like a country's power grid or communications, that would be most vulnerable to cyber weapons. So here we have a situation where you could almost attack any country for any reason whatsoever and just say that they were planning something. Exactly. That's one problem with it. And the other problem with it is that you're going to kill, this is the problem with mutually assured discussion. A handful of people who are, quote, leaders of a country can decide that they're going to kill men, women, and children, regardless of their innocence, throughout, and possibly endanger the entire life of the planet, of every living thing on the planet. What kind of insanity is that?
Exactly.
I don't know. It's just beyond, it's so staggering that I have to live with this, because when I look at things like, Facebook or LinkedIn, and these people are just happily going along with their lives. Hardly anything is said about serious problems like this. And people are just right on the cusp of, let's take a look at what just recently happened. Let's just a few clips here. Let's have a clip describing the Hawaiian experience of a false nuclear attack.
Just after 8 a.m. in Hawaii, pandemonium in paradise. Hysteria triggered by a false alarm. The terrifying message screamed across cell phones throughout the state. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill.
An accidental alert went out across Hawaii, urging people to take shelter due to an incoming ballistic missile. The false alarm was eventually called off, but not before Hawaiians and tourists started scrambling, even saying their goodbyes.
Cell phone signals here were absolutely overloaded as people called their loved ones to say goodbye as others ran for cover. It was a chaotic and confusing scene and a place known for its tranquility.
The emergency alert caused pandemonium when it went out to cell phones this morning across the islands, and it did not mince words. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii, it said. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. The false alert also went out on local TV.
The U.S. Pacific Command has detected a missile threat to Hawaii
and prompted evacuation announcements.
Okay, so that's pretty bad stuff.
In fact, another false alarm associated with North Korea, and not just any Japanese broadcaster, but the main public TV channel network, the NHK. And it came across not just on iPhone or phone apps, but also on the internet website of the Japanese broadcaster. It happened just about 5 minutes before 7 in the morning today, and it read in part, North Korea appears to have launched a missile. The government urges people to take shelter inside buildings or underground. Now, 5 minutes later, the network went on air and online and corrected it and apologized for it. But again, you got to believe not before a few people in Japan were alarmed. There have, in fact, been government warnings in the past when North Korea has sent missiles either in the direction of or over Japan. No reason was given for today's false alarm. And yes, this comes just days after that other false alarm was issued regarding a possible missile attack against Hawaii. That time it went on phone text and wasn't completely walked back for another 38 minutes. So Japan was a little bit quicker today. Hawaii just last night assigning a general from their National Guard to give a, quote, thorough review of this a mess up. Human error is thought to be behind that. And one more point, just an addendum here, Bill. North Korea seems to be piling on a little bit today. Their state media referring to that recent tweet from President Trump about his nuclear button being larger than Kim Jong-un. Well, the words of North Korean media, that is the spasm of a lunatic. A lot of noise out there right now, Bill. Back to you.
Thank you, Greg. Watch all of it. Greg Palcott there. Thank you from London. But weren't these alarms like the sending of nuclear-armed B-2s to Guam, the Canadian meeting that did not invite Russia and China, and these alarms kind of keeping the fire burning in regards to the U.S. threat of war if Korea does not nuclearize, if it doesn't non-nuclearize? So let's listen to this Fox News discussion of what happened about the B-2 bombers.
All right, back with a Fox News alert. The United States intensifying its show of force overnight. The Air Force deploying 3 nuclear-capable B-2 stealth bombers to the Pacific island of Guam, meant to send a very strong message to North Korea. And these are brand new pictures just into the newsroom. There's the takeoff right there. The fighter jets on their way to that U.S. territory that's not too far from North Korea. 200 airmen have also been sent. This comes just days after talks between North Korea and South Korea, and hopefully some progress in that department.
Okay, so we're now sending, during this time of those talks between the two countries, now we're sending nuclear-armed bombers to Guam. But they're surrounded with all kinds of things that are highly dangerous, which we'll just talk in a second. But you see my point, Hugo. During this time of peace, we are affirming that we're going to just obliterate North Korea. And
exactly,
if they don't,
right.
In other words, we are obviating any kind of diplomatic opening at all. It doesn't matter.
Look, and we don't even know where submarines are. Okay, for all we know, they're right outside, 10 feet from North Korea's beaches. For all we know, you know. So yeah, that's another factor. It just, you know, what it is the spasms of an empire that's losing control. You know. And it used to be that we were an empire before, but at least we tried to get along. Now we don't.
Or so it seems. We'll be right back after these messages. This is Johnny Bluestar, CEO of New Galaxy Enterprises, a media content development company. A social network campaign needs to be somewhat captivating, at least to a niche audience, consistently evolving yet capable of intriguing viewers who became interested after it had begun. No doubt, the audience is often fickle and exacting, and the creator of the campaign has a great deal to consider. Knowledge of the product and its proper audience is naturally the key to entreating them to become its consumers. To learn more about New Galaxy, see samples of our work, or talk to us about your project, please go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com and fill out the contact form. Are you confused about so much information on health issues? Do you find it hard to trust the sources of conflicting advice? Try Dr. Rodier's newsletters and blogs based on the latest information published in the best medical and nutritional journals. There is no charge for subscribing. Just log on to HugoRodier.com. That's HugoRodier.com to do so, or to download Dr. Rodier's latest publications. Here's a song by Zave and Bonnie, sung by Zave Nathan, and telling a little about his experience as a French person coming over to this country, with a slightly humorous slant, I would say.
Yo, man, check it out.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, man, this dude looks weird,
Yeah,
man. Is he from Mars or France or what?
France.
Yeah, man. Where's this dude been shopping at?
You think he's cute? Sir, this is your communication from Paris.
Oh, merci beaucoup, merci. I just arrived from Paris today with no reason but chercher la femme. I got my clothes, my face, I feel so debonair. Hey, comment allez-vous, monsieur, madame? And here I am, just a stranger in the streets of LA, looking out for something to do. And I say, hey, how you doing? I gotta show you something, cause I wanna be your baby to pew. Because I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. Because I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. You know I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. You know I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. Yeah.
Man, this dude is cool.
Like a child in a toy store, I think I want more, cause she talks about ménage à trois. Oh, she wants love, I'm ready to play the part. Go for it, c'est la vie, pourquoi pas? Oh, she wants to see my savoir-faire, ne l'oppose bien au contraire. I'm gonna have to sing her toujours l'amour. She said,
Sweet, too sweet, I wanna feel a little bit.
en love à la française, merci, bonjour. Because I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. You know I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. Because I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. You know I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. Mademoiselle, so what's your name?
Baba?
Ooh, you've gotta be my soupe du jour. I wanna kiss ton petit four. Ouh la la! Because I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. You know I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. Because I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. You know I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. You know I'm French, everything is possible entre nous. You know I'm French, ça doit marcher between me and you. Because I'm French. Oui, oui.
Well, here's the January 14th. That's just, a week ago, less. This is from the New York Times. Across the military, officers and troops are quietly preparing for a war they hope will not come. At Fort Bragg in North Carolina last month, a mix of 48 Apache gunships and Chinook cargo helicopters took off in an exercise that practiced moving troops and equipment under live artillery fire to assault targets. 2 days later, in the skies above Nevada, 119 soldiers from Army's 82nd Airborne Division parachuted out of C-17 military cargo planes under cover of darkness in an exercise that simulated a foreign invasion. Next month, an Army post across the United States, more than 1,000 reserve soldiers practice how to set up so-called mobilization centers that move military forces overseas in a hurry. And beginning next month with the military Olympics in the Korean town of Pyeongchang, the Pentagon plans to send more special operations troops to the Korean peninsula, an initial step towards what some officials said ultimately could be the formation of a Korean-based task force similar to the types that are fighting in Iraq and Syria. Others said the plan was strictly related to counterterrorism efforts. Oh, yeah. Okay. In the world of the American military, where contingency planning is a mantra drummed into the psyche of every soldier, the moves are ostensibly part of standard Defense Department training and troop rotations. But the scope and timing of the exercises suggest a renewed interest on getting the country's military prepared for what would be on the horizon with North Korea. So we're not waiting, right? We are just completely surrounding them, and we're getting ready for war right this minute. Does it look like we're going to have a war?
Well, it seems like every week it seems more and more likely, doesn't it?
I would say so, because what they're basically saying is you denuclearize, doesn't matter what you do, and the problem is the waiting. Because what could happen is that, if South Korea and North Korea get together, there might be a chance that that type of alliance would basically maybe convince, the United States that they're not going to want to, it wouldn't be as likely that they would want to destroy Korea as more of a unit anyway. And therefore, there would be a logical reason for North Korea to denuclearize. There might be some other options available if there could be a feeling that Kim had that he was relatively safer. That's just a thought. What do you think?
No, I agree. That was my point at the very beginning, when you were talking about the whole picture that I wasn't getting. I was saying, look, this guy's totally threatened, so he's going to say crazy things and play the part of a caged animal.
Well, I think that, I think that's true. I mean, I think he is a caged animal, and I think he is playing the part of one immensely successfully, so successfully that he's really presented a threat to the region and the rest of the world. But it's not to say that that threat isn't real to him. Of course it is. It's real to everybody who's it's real. Look, Russia probably has more nuclear weapons than we do. That's a real threat. That's a threat. But Russia is generally speaking a little bit more logical in the way they react to things. And so in a way, for so many years, it hasn't even been considered a threat. Nobody's talked about it, right? Now, let's just take a quick look at what's going on with the military footprint. This is from another article here, and it's just amazing here. Here's what we have. We have more U.S. military personnel in Japan than in any other country. We have 39,340 troops there, stationed across 112 bases. In April, the U.S. Air Force lined up dozens of helicopters, tactical fighters, jets, and surveillance planes on the runway at Kadena Airport in Japan as a show of force. On Tuesday, this is recently, Japan conducted joint air drills with two U.S. B-1 Lancers capable of carrying nuclear bombs near the Korean peninsula. So most of the troops from our troops are on Okinawa. The 7th Fleet, headquartered in Japan, the 7th Fleet is the largest of the U.S. Navy's deployed sea forces. 50 to 70 ships and submarines, 140 aircraft, and approximately 20,000 sailors across the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. U.S. Ronald Reagan is permanently deployed at Yokosuka, Japan, on the fleet as the fleet's flagship carrier. The fleet carries 14 destroyers, cruisers at any time, some armed with ballistic missile interceptors, long-range Tomahawk and attack missiles and anti-aircraft missiles, and up to 12 nuclear-powered submarines. South Korea, 23,468 people on duty in 83 sites. Second to Germany, after Germany, with 34,805 troops. This was set up a long time ago. In April, the U.S. installed a Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD, if you remember. The South Koreans were afraid of having that there, but anyway, it's there now, I believe. And then there's Guam, and that's has a lot of stuff, a lot of people. 3,831 military personnel on Guam. So they refer to the island, listen to this, as by U.S. commanders a permanent aircraft carrier. And so we also have a lot in the Thailand and Philippines and Singapore. And in Hawaii, there are 40,000 military personnel in Hawaii, the closest U.S. state to the Korean Peninsula. It's the headquarters for the United States Pacific Command, which covers about half the Earth's surface, including the entire Asia-Pacific region. Its mandate includes roughly 375,000 military and civilian personnel, 200 ships, and more than 1,000 aircraft. What do you think of that? Sorry for going on so long. I guess if I really was comprehensive, I'd be talking here for a couple of hours about our military assets.
Yeah, and I bet you we don't know the half of it.
What do we need all these people there? I mean, this is a big show costing a lot of money. I mean, assuming, I don't agree with any of it, but I don't agree with nuclear weapons on anybody's part. But this is a tremendous expense to have all this overkill. Because I believe that probably just one Trident submarine with its numerous missiles could destroy all North Korea. But we have a lot more. What's the point?
Yeah, guns or butter. So we've chosen guns. So we have all kinds of social problems because all the money's going to the military complex.
You know, that was an interesting program today, wasn't it, Hugo?
Yeah, it's so much madness, and it's just amazing. We're just guessing, what's really going on. I mean, of course, we have to try.
Yeah, I mean, we are guessing. I mean, so much is being done covertly behind the back. Sometimes, of course, in military circumstances, you have to do things covertly. And sometimes when you want to repress a free people over a period of time, you have to do that covertly as well. So there is a value to being covert. It's just that I think there's a whole lot that's being used against the American people to keep them having their inalienable rights preserved. So I will see you next week, right?
See you next week. Yes, Johnny.
We want to thank you for listening to Inalienable and Free, a program which looks at geopolitics from a spiritual point of view, believing that the inalienable rights spoken of in the Declaration are aligned with the nature of the Creator. As such, the mission of this program is to create awareness of these rights, to protect them, and to facilitate governmental actions that will align with them, ultimately through the electoral process. Yes, we enjoin those who savor these rights to take action to safeguard them, but also appeal to those who have given up from maintaining them or have actually joined with those who repress them to try and rediscover their value. You will find if you do, you will also rediscover yourself, blessed by the Creator with the prosperity, liberty, and freedom we know is the true legacy of every citizen on planet Earth.
Futures in the lost and found. Nothing's like it used to